So my name is Michael Falk. I'm an emergency medicine physician. I specialize in pediatric emergency medicine. And I've been fortunate enough to just be working for the last 6 weeks in Ukraine, evacuating patients who've been, generally patients who have been injured in the war. I've got a background in emergency relief work. I started, the first time would have been Haiti after the earthquake. And then in 2016, 2017, I volunteered with a group called NYC Medics. We were working in Iraq, taking care of patients who were getting injured in the fighting in Mosul. And then since the war started in Ukraine, I've now been in Ukraine on 6 different occasions doing some version of emergency relief. So initially, I was working with an organization where we were training people how to manage trauma patients. And then they had other courses where something called CBRNE, which is teaching people how to deal with chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons, mass casualty scenarios, and stuff like that. But most recently, I went back with a German organization called CADIS, and they are based in the main center is based in Dnipro, which is the 4th largest city in Ukraine. But we also staff out of Sumy, which is one of the provinces in northern Ukraine, just over from Kharkiv, so it's right on the Russian border. And then we also are based in Donetsk region, which is currently now about 70% occupied by Russia. So we're basically in ambulances, and it'll be me, a medic or a nurse, and a Ukrainian driver / interpreter, some of whom are also medics too. We get calls from a dispatcher about patients that need to get moved to a higher level of care generally, and then we go get that patient and we transport them to another hospital. Some of those trips can be an hour, some of those trips can be, like from Sumy, we routinely drive all the way to Kyiv. It's a 4.5, 5 hour drive. And the patients can be stable to profoundly sick. So it's a mix, a lot of military personnel who are injured, but also we see a fair number of civilians who are injured too. We also even do some general medical calls because there are, despite the fact that it is a war, there are people still having heart attacks and strokes and other things like that, and they need to get to another hospital where they can get cared for. And interestingly, in some of the cities, especially in places like Donetsk, the military has taken over the local hospitals, and they're primarily now military hospitals because most of the locals have left because of the threat. It's interesting. I mean, when I first went there, I would have likened it to, and I still think it's a very similar analogy. It would have been like probably being in the UK during the Battle of Britain, like, there's constant air raid alerts. I have my phone here. I can show you there's an app on my phone that's it's an air raid siren, and you basically key into that app what province you are in Ukraine and what city you're in, and if there's a notification, your phone goes off. But the regions we are in are under almost constant threat. So there are 9, 10, 11 alerts a day. So you can't just you either have to go on with your life, or you're basically sitting in a bomb shelter all day long, waiting for something to blow up. So the general rule we do is, unless there's a direct and credible threat, or we hear explosions / small arms firing up to try to shoot down the drones, that's generally when we shelter. Otherwise, you just keep moving because it's basically nonstop every day. I mean, like in Donetsk, you hear drones overhead all the time. Explosions are nonstop all the time. We go to one city in particular, Drushkivka, to pick up patients at the military hospital there, and every time we go through, another building's probably been destroyed by a drone or a bomb going off. And most of the wounds we see now are, by and large, drone-related. We see some gunshot wounds, but a lot of the wounds we're seeing is drones. They've turned them into suicide drones, and they just wait to see the object, because they're usually run on fiber optic cables now and cameras, and they wait to see somebody come out, and then they just drop a drone on that person and blow it up. Depends on where you are. So if you're in the Kherson region, which in southern Ukraine, across the river from them is the line where the Russians are. In that city, they're terrorizing civilians with drones. They're basically, the thinking is that they're using it to train their drone operators, and they're sent, like, so you can't even walk in the city without drones chasing you down and civilians getting wounded all the time. But I mean, this is a war of genocide. Like, let's be clear, right? Vladimir Putin has clearly stated his goals, and I'm not like being some crazy alarmist when I say this. Timothy Snyder, who's a professor of Russian and Ukrainian history at Yale, said this from the start. He said that if you listen to Vladimir Putin and what he said, he wants to exterminate the state of Ukraine. And he does. He wants to exterminate it. He doesn't believe that there is a Ukrainian history separate from Russian history, and that's what's driving this. So, they are the reason we're probably not seeing as many civilians is because so many of the civilians have left those regions and have fled to safer parts. So, but in Kherson, they dropped two glide bombs on a cancer hospital. You can't tell me that a cancer hospital is a military target. So, that kind of tells us everything that's going on. And they bombed in Kyiv, the children's hospital. Now the Russians claim it was an accident, but I'm pretty sure that they don't care.
What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're in a really dangerous place right now, and I think that the West needs to commit 100% to supporting Ukraine and their fight.